with your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew +1, but we'll get to that in a second. But as usual, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us here on Twitch and subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a huge help to our channel. And if you haven't already or don't already know, there is an AMA happening over on the Cypher Unlimited Discord. We have the fine folks over at Monte Cook Games stopping by to answer questions about the Magnus Archives RPG. So if you haven't joined the Discord yet and haven't posted a question to ask, be sure to go and do that. We've got some wonderful gem questions in there already, so thank you to everyone who's posted. But yeah, it should be a great way to learn more about the project. And with that being said, Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Well, you know, I don't even know if I have enough words, but I'm going to try to put something together tonight. Let's put it simply. Let's say Dungeons and Dragons. Let's say or RPGs. Let's talk about somebody who is so prolific in this field that Anthony gave them the best title ever. And that's the illest pen game in the industry. So that, without further ado, I can't say any more other than welcome Monte Cook people of MCG.
Hey guys, it's really cool to be back here chatting with you guys. I always like coming on and talking about what's going on.
Monte, welcome back to the CU, man. It's been awesome, you know, getting to chat with you over these years, and today's going to be no different. And you know, normally we ask our guests to talk about themselves a little bit, but you know, first of all, this is the CU, and if people don't know who you are by now in the 6 years we've been doing this, shame on you. So let's kind of like just jump right into this, right? The Magnus Archives role-playing game is having a fantastic first week or week and a half, really. You guys have over 1,300,000 raised already, over that, and over close to 7,500 backers, and you still have like 15 days to go. Oh, good Lord Almighty. You know, the Rusty Quill podcast itself was beloved by so many people. How did Monte Cook Games manage to get this license for this project? And how's it been working with Rusty Quill?
Well, you know, we have some incriminating photos of those guys, and they, you know, I think, I might be talking out of turn here, but I think that it's because, you know, we worked with the fantastic folks behind Old Gods of Appalachia, and I think they were talking about us behind our back, but fortunately they were saying good things. But just in general, you know, I'm a huge fan, and I have just before the Backerkit campaign launched, I finished my second complete listen through of all the episodes, and there's 5 seasons of this podcast, so that's no small claim to fame. And so I love it. I mean, I'll be honest, I had not listened to the podcast before they came to us, and when they came to us, I was very skeptical because we'd already done a horror podcast role-playing game, and I listened to the first episode, and I was hooked. I was like, this is it. This is my jam right here. You know, and I knew that we could do a lot of things that were really different. You know, you know, that were unique for Magnus Archives, and so that's why I was really excited. Anytime I can take on new challenge, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, Al's been hounding me to listen to this podcast for quite a while now, and yes, everybody watched last week's stream. I had not listened to anything. I'm on episode 48, y'all. So I in 1 week I've already did season 1 and a couple of episodes of season 2, and he was absolutely right. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so good. I was so hooked on it when I first listened, and it's still amazing to me that even before I knew that Monte Cook Games was doing Magnus Archives. I know I've said this a couple times, but I love saying it. My husband approached me first, and he was like, "Did you know that there were the Monte Cook Games doing?" I was like, "Excuse me, I just woke up. What?" Oh, yeah, it's such a great podcast.
It's you know what? It's funny because I normally listen to my podcast or my audiobooks at work because I'm working with my hands all day. And since I've been out of work this last week, I haven't listened to a lot. But what I've been doing is like we were just talking about going to sleep to the Magnus Archives. So, I'm like I think halfway through, 100 episode 120, something like that. But it's crazy because I have to go back a couple episodes after I fall asleep, and it's like, oh wait a minute, I already heard. Just like in your subconscious, and it's great. Great.
There's a scary idea to go to sleep listening to this because I don't know what kind of dreams you're gonna have.
I was quite literally about to say that, like, do not do, like, you're setting yourself up for some bad times potentially.
I mean, that's what Chad is pretty much saying aggressively. Not a good idea. Don't do it. Don't do it high. There's a bunch of.
Don't do it high. Yeah, fair enough.
Dean? Hello, Dean.
Oh, he's all goofed up.
No, my phone started making noise and I muted myself. So real quick, sorry about that. So last week, Monty, you were on our really good friend Kid Up's channel with Alex Newell and Johnny Sims and Rusty Quill, talking about the Magnus Archives. You guys spoke in length about the podcast itself and the tone and its feel. It gives off a very Call of Cthulhu vibe, or Eldritch investigation type deal. It also reminds us of another great podcast you guys worked on and converted to an RPG, which is Old Gods of Appalachia. How does Magnus Archive differ from the two, but how could the two work together?
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I had not thought about how they would work together, actually. Isn't that funny? I've never thought about how you would pull them both together. I think, the types of horror, the types of stories that they tell are so different and so unique. Like, making Magnus Archives its own sort of thing has been really easy because it has sort of its own kind of slow, creepy build up, and one of the things that I've been focusing on a lot is how is the use of the statement. And in fact, what I'm doing is I'm designing a way so that the group can all work together to kind of craft the statement, and in kind of this in sort of a systematic way, so that everybody can kind of be a part of that, and then that's what the adventure comes from. That's the wellspring of the adventure that then the GM runs, and so that right there kind of makes Magnus Archives its own thing. I think that there's so Old Gods is really cool and interesting because it's more about, in my mind anyway, Old Gods is about like defending the ones you love from the forces of the dark, and it's really about family and whatnot. And Magnus Archives is, I'd almost say, especially from the role-playing game point of view, it's kind of more like an X-Files kind of, we're going to investigate this thing and go see what's going on over there and get embroiled in all kinds of weirdness. I think it's, where I think I would play off the two is that it's not really a mechanics thing. It's more of a mood thing, right? That, because, once you really get into the podcast, you get really invested in these characters and their relationships, and no spoilers for you guys that aren't, but not always happy things happen, and it's a real dagger in your gut, but it's because you have such a strong relationship with these characters. And so that's the kind of thing for in a great role-playing game set, great role-playing game campaign, right, where you get the characters interacting, and then suddenly there's these relationships, and it becomes more about like, you're this set of stats and I'm this set of stats, but it's more like, oh man, we are, we're in this together. We've got to get out of this together and, have strong relationships. I think that's kind of how I would pull those two things together, I think.
That sounds awesome. First of all, the story sentence that the characters can build, I love that because that's so Cypher system. Like it's like the core mechanic. It's something unique, but it's also, it feels like Cypher system, so
Sure.
We're Cypher guys, so anything that gives us that feel, even if it's a new setting, is always awesome to us.
I like to say like this, Monty, is what's so cool about it is I think the core of what you've done with Cypher System is built an evolutionary system. It has the simplest DNA, but that DNA is like the stem cell for the next idea, and it always keeps it together. And just want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
Before I ask my next question, I just want to say two quick things. One, chat, we definitely want some of your questions to ask Monty at the end of ours. So please preface your question with the word question so Al could see it and he could cut and paste it on a separate document. And also, Dean mentioned that Ken Hub had an awesome interview with the Rusty Quill guys at Monte Cook Games. Please go check it out. Just wait till after the stream and go check it out. We'll post a link to that as well. But definitely go check out not only Ken Hub's channel, but the interview because it was fantastic.
Yeah. Let me interject one thing too, because we haven't really mentioned it yet. And that is, I'm going to try really hard not to be too full of spoilers, but I can't make any promises. There's going to be some spoilers for the podcast coming out. So,
speaking of spoilers, Monty.
Wait, isn't my question next, Anthony?
Oh, I thought it was
no, Joe. Look at this guy. He's too excited. He's getting jumped ahead. He wants to skip me. Okay. Anyways, you had said something. Oh my God, this guy! You heard mention about spoilers. He wants to jump the gun. But anyways, you had said something a little earlier. I chuckled about it in the chat. Something bad happens or whatever you had mentioned. I already lost the exact verbiage. But either way, that was kind of a good segue into my question. As one of the biggest fans, or the biggest fan out of us three here of the Magnus Archive, I listened to the whole thing. I'm hooked on the source material. It's absolutely wonderful. I should give it a re-listen. I absolutely love the Magnus Archives. If you haven't listened yet, everybody in the audience, go listen. You guys have described the show as a fresh take on horror. I'm just curious to know if you guys will have all the characters from the show statted out or in the book in some way in the Magnus Archives RPG to possibly interact with or play with. And as a kind of a follow-up in the same realm, do you also plan to have the more iconic monsters from the show available for use in the book?
Yes to all of that. So again, I'm already facing spoilers. Podcast spoilers. I'll just say this: there are things that happen in the podcast that enable me as a game designer to create a game that allows a GM and a whole table of gamers to kind of create the Magnus Archives that they want to play with. So if you want, Jonathan Sims to be the archivist of Magnus Archives in your campaign, you can do that. If you don't want him to be the archivist, you want to make your own archivist, you want to make, a player character be the archivist, you don't want a Magnus Archives, you want to have a different institution that works like the Magnus Archives, you want something like all of that works, and it all works within the canon of the show. And I just want to say thank you to Johnny for creating that right at the end that makes that all possible. But yes, the characters will be statted up, and you'll see. My goal right now, I don't know 100% that this is going to make it all the way to publication, but my goal right now is to write up sort of the core group of main characters as both NPCs and as PCs in the book. Because if you know Cypher, you know that those two things kind of mean different things stat wise. And so if you wanted to actually play those characters, you could. But the game is really geared toward making your own character. And so presumably, if you want these guys to be, you want Bashira to be in your campaign, she would be an NPC. And then, we're having just a blast with the creatures, from the not them to the anglerfish to, all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that I personally love, is just kind of my preference, is that there's almost no distinction between like monsters and NPCs, right? You start talking about an avatar of one of the entities, and they're so weird and they can do so many weird things. Even though they started out as a person, they're really a monster now, right? I don't know. The podcast rarely uses the word monster, but there really isn't any other way to say it. And so, all of those great NPC, or they don't call them NPCs, but all those great characters in the podcast are going to be in the book as NPCs, and some of them are just going to be scary as hell.
Oh,
yeah. I got to say, Monty, I'm going to tell you, just because of the way you describe Cypher, I don't even do that. Not everything is protagonist, antagonist. I don't even use NPC anymore. It's like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited because I haven't finished the whole show, but the characters themselves are so rich, and I really like how the monsters are described, for lack of a better term, because I don't think monsters is the correct word either, but it's just simplified for someone that doesn't know, Magnus Archives, to understand. Ultimately, what I'm getting at is I love monster bestiaries, so I wanted to know if there was going to be some extra baddies for whether I want to use it for this game or for others. So more baddies is always a good option in my book.
Absolutely.
In last week's stream, right, I gave away a huge spoiler, or according to Al, it was a huge spoiler from the show when I was reading an excerpt of the Backerkit. So I was wondering, how important will it be for an experienced Cypher player to know the show, and do you need to know the lore to play the game?
It's my job to make sure that the answer to that question is no. You don't have to, you can just pick up this book if you're just interested in role-playing games in general, or Cypher System in specific. You want to pick up a cool new horror game. This will fit that bill, and it will have everything that you need to play it. If you are a fan of the podcast, well, all I can say is I'm sure that you will see that I am also a big fan of the podcast, because it's just oozing out of every page. But if you don't know who these characters are that I'm talking about, if you don't know what a Sasha or a not Sasha is, that doesn't matter. You'll learn it all, everything you need to know. And again, I can't stress enough, this book is going to really be a campaign creation tool, so that you can kind of craft your own universe where these horrible things are happening.
Oh man, I'm so excited about that aspect. And just before Dean goes in with his next question, I wanted to mention that I think I mentioned in the last stream, but I had actually had an idea for a TMA game before, we started hearing more details about it. And the idea was essentially an alternate universe, so it fits perfectly in line with what you guys have set up. So I'm beyond excited.
Awesome.
Oh man, well, that's what I was gonna say, kind of same lines of what Al just said. I have to say thank you. And there's a lot of us old geezers out here, we're all in that same club, Monty. that just love the fact that you build these rich, rich worlds. They are so immersive. They have so much information, but it's still wide open. It's still so many places that you can create within it. So yes, and that leads me right into the question, which is, the majority of the show is focused in England, an institute in England. Will there be information on other organizations in other parts of the world? Will we be able to build our own institutes from the ground up as players? What does it look like?
Absolutely. In the canon of the show, there is a very brief mention of an American branch that is in the Washington, D.C. It's the Usher Foundation, I think. And then there is a Chinese division. And those are ample. Like, if you want to grab those and have your characters based on there, great. But if you want to have the Magnus Institute be in Chicago, that's also totally fine, right? Or if you want, really kind of anything goes, and this book will help you. Like, part of what I've done is I've kind of broken down all of the necessary, I say that, necessary elements that I think you want to have in your game that will give you a Magnus Archives experience, right? And so part of that is some kind of institution, some kind of foundation where this information is all gathered and you've got resources, but it's got its own stuff going on, so you got some creepy stuff there. And then, like, for example, you really want somebody like Leitner, who is gathering all the books, right? And you want, cool avatars of the various entities, and you want, somebody out there like Salesa, who's trading in the weird artifacts and stuff like that, and there's other elements too, like one of the things that I love about Magnus Archives is that it starts out kind of like a monster of the week sort of horror thing, but then it just keeps wrapping up into itself, and characters that you thought were just one-offs in episode, an early episode, 20, 30, 50 episodes later, suddenly they're back, and that's the kind of thing I want to help people create for their own games, right? And so that kind of wraps around and creates that. And there's also an interesting thing that I have kind of keyed off of in Magnus Archives with the NPCs, and there's a lot of familial relationships, right? There are families of people. There are, people who have sort of been messing around with the wrong stuff for generations, right? And that's, I think, a really fun aspect to play around with. And I kind of go back to something I was saying before, like that whole RPG group, the whole player characters as kind of a found family, right? It just mimics the show's, it mimics the characters' interactions in the show so well. And yeah, in the podcast, they don't always get along wonderfully, especially at the beginning, but eventually at the end, it all comes together, and I think I can't even remember what the original question was, but I'm just blathering on.
Can you create your own institution? And I guess the answer is definitely yes.
Yes, I should just say, I'm just going to say yes and no from now on. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean,
I don't know. I'm seeing a field office in West Virginia in my future to mail the books.
Nice.
And Monty, don't stop talking. I'm just enjoying watching the creative process. I love it. It's like I said, you're like a visceral, phenomenon, and I just see like ideas jump all around. I love it. It's inspiring. So thank you.
Well, I'm kind of going on not very much sleep today and a lot of caffeine, so maybe I'm a little bit more hyper than I normally am. I don't know.
And what I was gonna say was before I jump into my next question here was the ramblings is kind of on point, right? You're spilling beans to you know who. Just to for again, I try to avoid spoilers as much as I can, so you know who is making you spill guts. But either way, let me go ahead and move on to the next question here.
Are you saying that something is watching? Is that what you're saying?
Potentially, yes. Oh man, but yes.
Monty, after the show, do you sit in front of a tape recorder and get
These tape recorders, they just keep appearing and, turning themselves on, and I don't know what's going on there. Actually, that doesn't happen until like the last couple of seasons, so that's already a spoiler.
That's a couple like that. That's gonna start happening with a few days left in the Backerkit campaign.
We gotta do a skit now. Monte Cook,
a statement. Yeah. Statement begins. Oh, then we're already getting hella sidetracked. Let me go and dive into my question. So the Magnus Archives has a very eerie feel to it. Yeah. How do you plan to capture that feel mechanically within the Cypher system? The free rules primer that you can download now within the Backerkit campaign page already has a couple of examples. One new mechanic we see is called stress. Can you explain a little on how that mechanic works, and do you plan on any other mechanics new to the Cypher system for this game?
Yes. For the last part, yes, and I can talk about that further. But yeah, let's talk about stress. So, in my experience, it can be difficult. Like Cypher characters are pretty hardy, right? A person who kind of knows what they're doing and managing their pools and using their ciphers and everything. They're pretty capable. It's not. I often say it's not really a 0 to hero kind of game system. You start out and you're already a pretty capable character. So I wanted to pull back from that a little bit and say, what if if that big monster shows up, right, and its touch will, set things on fire. What if you knew that, man, if that thing touches me a couple of times, I'm probably just dead? How to make that happen. And so the other thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to tie that together with, and you listen to the Magnus Archives, and if you listen to it and can come away without thinking about stress, well, then you're not like me, because it's a stressful experience, right? And those characters go through a lot. And so I wanted to create a mechanic that reflected that, when I see something horrible, when I experience some supernatural awfulness, or when, someone, some maniac slashes at me with a knife, that's all tied into this stress system. And then, and the more stress you get, the more that's going to affect your character. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I also wanted that there to be a clear break. I didn't want that to just be, coming out of your int pool or something like that. I wanted there to be a clear break so that, somebody pulls out a shotgun, right? Or, some powerful supernatural entity comes in that, can really do something, horrible to you. Make, somebody from the hunt shows up with giant claws or whatever, that it just went straight to the damage track. And so I created stress, right? And so stress is this area where okay, this is bad. It's making it a little bit harder for me to act and deal with this stuff and whatnot. But if we're really talking, if you're going to push me off a 3-story building, or you're going to, come at me with a meat cleaver or whatever, I'm in real danger. I'm from the get-go. And I think that really, really plays into horror games, right? You need to think at any given moment, my life might be on the line here, right? For you to be truly scared, not like, oh, I'm getting a little low on my might pool, which, yeah, I'm obviously. I hope it goes without saying. I'm not saying I'm not dissing the Cypher system. It's just a different kind of setup. But the other thing, the other reason why the stress thing exists is, even if you're only on episode 48, you have probably noticed that as the story goes on and as characters are encountering bad things and the supernatural horrors and whatnot, they're affected by it. They're changed. And small spoiler here, right? They actually will begin to take on aspects of the supernatural themselves. And I wanted to have that reflected in the game. And so one of the things about stress is once you accumulate a lot of stress from, all these terrible things, that can convert right into, without getting too much down into the weeds, that can basically convert to you gaining access to a different set of special abilities that you couldn't otherwise get, right? And so you, like, from your focus or from your type or whatever, and so you gain these abilities, like if it's if you're touched by the desolation, you might end up with the ability to set things on fire or control fire with your mind or whatever, and there's a lot of different options, and that's really interesting, I think, because it's a stark contrast from, like, starting player characters are pretty in this game are pretty mundane, right? They got a lot of skills, they got a lot of, they're competent, they know what they're doing, but they're not like, whipping out a sheen of ice over their body to protect themselves, or they're not superheroes in any way, right? There's nothing supernatural about them. But in the same way that in the podcast, right, supernatural starts to kind of creep in and you start getting these abilities. And there's two things about that, right? Which is, turns out that when you use the supernatural, you get more stress, right? And so it just kind of begins to compound, like, you use more of this and you get more of this kind of thing. But the other thing that I like is that working into a system where, like, especially at first, you're not in total control, right? You're not in control. You've got this ability, but sometimes it might flare up when you don't want it to, right? Or maybe you're beholden to the entity in some way, right? And because you move into a place where you get enough of these powers, and suddenly you are an avatar of one of the entities, and that's a whole, that's like a whole mantle of responsibilities that you might not want. And it's just great role-playing fodder. And I think it reflects the story really, really well, because you've got these protagonists that are fighting against these horrible fears, but in the end they're realizing, well, we kind of got to use them in order to fight them without being consumed by them. And I think that's really interesting sort of situation, and makes this very different from a lot of other role-playing game experiences.
Monty, this isn't my question, but since hearing you talk, just from a design perspective, right? Did you know early on when you first started that you needed to add a mechanic like this into the existing Cypher system rules to capture the tone and feel?
I kind of did. I mean, we've talked before. That I love tinkering with mechanics and playing around with new stuff, and so this was an opportunity. I mean, not just willy-nilly making up new stuff, but really seizing on the fact that Magnus Archives is really its own thing, and Cypher System is extremely flexible, so flexible that I can add a mechanic like stress, and it doesn't like wipe everything out, and I'm not starting from scratch, right? because everything else still works the same way, right? You got the stat pools, and you're using them for effort and abilities and whatnot. This is just a its own thing. So
What's funny is It's funny to hear you say that, Monty, because just what you said as you were talking and describing, and Anthony said what he said in the response again. It was like you could already see how the stress mechanic could be plugged into other genres. Because I could see using it for like a pulp era game. If you were like Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow and stuff like that, that would be like a perfect push for something like that.
I've been thinking about that too.
I was gonna say that early on in Cypher System, when we first started doing this, we used to hear a lot of, "Oh, you can't do horror in Cypher System." You got the stress mechanic, horror mode, madness. Don't tell me that I can't kill a character if I really want to. There's plenty opportunities to kill a character.
Don't forget old gods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the horror mode mechanic so much that I'm including a few other things that sort of up the number of intrusions that kind of work their way into the game as a way to just really capture that horror. Like in a good horror story, once things start going wrong, everything starts going wrong, right? and gem intrusions, I think, are a great way to portray that.
I love
those are the best horror stories when everything just snowballs to like, oh my god, what the hell is gonna happen now?
Yep.
All right, let me ask my question. I know you mentioned character types, right? And they seem to be completely different from the standard Cypher System character type, but still completely compatible with the Cypher System line. Could you tell us a little bit about these new character types?
Yeah, so they're their own thing, right? They're 4 new types, but they're keyed off of the 4 that you will find in the Cypher System rulebook. So we've got the Protector, who, like in the show, would be Bashira or Daisy, and they're there to kind of keep everybody else safe, and they're tougher and hardier and whatnot. And then the Investigator is just just what it sounds like, right? You're good at looking around, finding clues, talking to people, that kind of thing. And then the elocutionist is that's your face man, right? That's the person who's actually going out and really doing interviews with witnesses and talking their way into the government offices to get information that you really shouldn't be allowed into, and that kind of stuff. And then probably the character type that doesn't have an immediate analog to one of the characters in the podcast, at least one of the main characters of the podcast, is the occultist. And this is just they're in the game because I think that people are going to want to have a character not like throwing spells around, but like knows about the occult, knows about the weirdness, and if there is a point at which you've got to actually start drawing upon some supernatural stuff in order to get the job done, they're going to lead the way. And those 4 map to the warrior, the explorer, the speaker, and the adept, right? They're all pretty close. They're going to seem familiar to players.
Monty, this just sounds like you want us to like do a variant, bring Carl Kolchak back. Night Stalker. So Night Stalker fits into Magnus Archives real nicely. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Because you just imagine that Carl works for an institute over here in America. Gets drafted.
Yeah.
He's drawn to it. Put a little ticket. Is awesome.
He would definitely be an investigator, I think.
Yep, an investigator.
I mean, I would just say this with all your projects that have different character types, whether it's Old Gods or the original line of Cypher System books, Predation. The character types are pretty seamless if you're just using a CSR character. For the most part, it's easily compatible. So I expect this to be no different.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I the archetypes in Magnus Archives, the types are, kind of like what you asked me earlier. Can you play this game without knowing anything about the podcast? And this is where I get to like where the answer is absolutely yes, right? Because we've got, even if you don't know who any of the characters are and you're not concerned with trying to make someone who's just like Martin or just like Tim or something, you've got the bases are all covered there of the kind of characters you're going to want to play in a game where you're investigating the paranormal and encountering the scary stuff, right? Like, in the end, if you want to just run a Kolchak game or a X-Files game or whatever, you could use this game and it would work, I think, really well.
So, it's absolutely awesome. So, Monty, we can't talk about Cypher System and not talk about ciphers and artifacts. I mean, how will ciphers and artifacts, work in the Magnus Archives? And do you plan to create new ciphers for this setting?
So ciphers will be, if you're a Cypher System fan, then about subtle ciphers, and this game will be primarily falling back on subtle ciphers of just things that you can use in the moment when you need them. They come and they go, and they're just like a configurable, cool new ability that you can have at that one time. But artifacts, again, it's just handed to me as a designer, handed to me on a platter with this setting, right? Because it's got its own artifacts, and I'm kind of lumping in, artifacts with books, because their books play such a big part in Magnus Archives as well. Although the actual rule book is going to make it, they're going to be two different categories because they do function a little bit differently, and they're a little bit different from Cypher System artifacts in that they're probably more potent, but also more there's some real drawbacks to them. Maybe a little bit like Old Gods artifacts, a little bit, where there's kind of that price to pay kind of aspect to them.
I always just love how you guys manage to incorporate the resource management in everything. Like it's always a resource that you have to decide what to do. And to me, as a player, that's probably one of the most enjoyable things of the Cypher System as a whole. I constantly have decisions to make.
Me too. Role-playing games really are just about making decisions, right? And when you come right down to it, it's just make a decision, and I don't remember how you guys feel about language on your.
Whatever did you say?
Yeah.
You fuck around and you find out, right? That's what role-playing games are all about.
Right.
Oh man.
It's really great, that you said all that, Monty, because that's just kind of it. Is you do that with Cypher, you do that with all aspects of it. There's always something new, but it ties to the old, and it continues to make everything blossom. It gives us as creatives, that thing, like Anthony was just saying. So yeah, it's really cool to explore Cypher and be able to tell a great story cinematically. through a tabletop game, you know.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah, that's definitely the goal. A good story.
I was gonna say before I dive into my next question here, I feel like Magnus fans are huge fans of what you just said, the fuck around and find out aspect of these things. So I feel like there's gonna be a huge blast for them in that regards, especially if they don't really come from an RPG background. You'll soon learn that fuck around and find out is a big thing in TTRPG. So strap in.
Definitely.
We already had Shauna coin the phrase, "You want to play some fucking dinosaurs?" So
Monty statement, new Cypher system share. You fuck around and find out.
But yeah, let me dive into my next question here. So this Backerkit project has been zooming past so many stretch goals so far with the new exclusive dice, the XP cards, the deluxe edition, GM campaign journals, guests from Mr. Spiderbook, character portfolios, Lightner plates, just to name a few things that you're providing here. Is there something besides the core Magnus book that you personally are excited to be working on in regards to all this?
So this is I think the thing that I'm actually excited about, and I don't honestly know. Again, I'm going on about 3 hours of sleep. I don't honestly know if we've talked about this in the campaign or not. But if we haven't, then it's a reveal here. But we're planning out like a prop kit, right? Of things that you can use, forms you can fill out, things that you can actually hand to your players at the table and say, oh, you were looking for the evidence. Well, here it is. I really love that kind of thing. I think, with Bear Whiter, our art director, at my side, I feel really confident that undertaking any kind of project like that will be, it's going to end up looking amazing and beautiful. Like I think about Invisible Sun and some of the stuff that we did with that, and the prop kits and whatnot that we did for that game. So I'm excited about that.
yeah, I mean, when you just mentioned that, first of all, we know what Bear is capable of. Invisible Sun, what you guys did with Old Gods was incredible, and the Tolus props were incredible as well. So you just killed Al just now. His heart stopped for a few seconds.
So real quick, let me jump in just to reveal a funny, pertinent fact here. Well, let me first say this: Charles M. Ryan is in the chat and said, "Monty, I literally just answered someone in AMA about stretch goals and said we couldn't reveal them." Oh my God! See excuse me, something is pulling things out of you. But anyways, just a funny setup here. As far as the stream goes, funny enough, the guys I'm talking with here, they can't see me. Only you guys watching the stream can see me. I have a funny situation going on my camera. So these guys didn't see me freaking out when Monty mentioned the prop kit. I took off my glasses. I was mouthing, I am so damn excited about that. Oh my God.
And that's one
We
thing
gotta get there, right? We gotta get the support on the campaign to make it, because as you can imagine, something like a prop kit is really expensive to make. You guys got.
If you haven't backed the project, go now and back it. You guys know how we roll. We back at the everything level every time. It's always worth your bang for your buck. We've done several videos on this. You get in 5 or 6, maybe sometimes 8 or 9 times your money when you back at the everything level for every MCG, backer kit or a project that they put out before. So it's well worth it, and you get everything. So
We really like to we like to take care of people, right? We don't take people's support lightly, right? It's a I've backed a ton of crowdfunding campaigns, and like, you got to have some faith, and not everybody always, delivers like they were hoping to, and we want to make sure that we do, right? We want to take care of people, because we wouldn't be here, right? We wouldn't be having this discussion. We wouldn't be making a Magnus Archives campaign if it wasn't for crowdfunding. We're only able to do that because we get the support from fans.
Well, I would
I
you
was
say?
going to say, Charles, just well, a lot of the props in Invisible Sun were literally handmade. So I wonder if that's going to be the same case in Magnus Archives.
I'm losing my stuff here, guys. I know y'all can't see me, but my glasses are still off. Oh my God, I can't. Yo, I said it in the chat, but everyone up your pledges right now. And who said in the chat? I don't know if that's an L or an I, but SB in the chat. Call your friends. Screw it. Call your enemies. Get them to back the damn game. Do it. We need that prop set.
I've said this on air before. That's my thing. I love props. I love ambiance. I love setting things up. I've always loved that as a GM. And when you started talking prop kits and stuff like that, the little kid in me just does his happy dance. So
Me too.
thank you. This is awesome.
Monty, before I ask my last question, and then we'll go into the chat questions, right? I just want to ask you, I don't know if I asked you this before, but what film or whatever media scared you personally? Was there a film or book that literally scared you?
I think a lot of things did. Like, I probably watched The Exorcist way too young. And that scared me really a lot. But even more recent stuff, like her, if you've seen Hereditary, the scene, what scene I'm talking about, and that scene just made me crap my pants. Maybe not literally, but metaphorically.
I remember telling Tammy and Shauna when we had them on for Old Gods that I rarely get scared. I think I'm the biggest horror fan out of our group, and The Exorcist and Deliverance are the only two films that ever scared me. Something about squealing like a pig, just something about that scene that I could never remove from my memory back as a child.
No,
there's a few. Like there's some 80s horror I think that really holds up, like John Carpenter's The Thing, right? Like
classic.
I mean, I wouldn't say that it scares me anymore, right? Because I've seen it like 25 times, but that first time, I still remember the first time seeing that.
You know what it is, Monty, though? Like you talk about, for me, that's kind of what it was back growing up, especially in the 70s. They used a lot more smoke and mirrors and atmosphere. So it was always the things you didn't see and the things you didn't know. They left it to your own imagination. So you really were like in it. Like, remember like Burnt Offerings or the original Amityville Horror?
Yes.
Alien. Yeah, Texas Chainsaw. Exactly. It was like all these things you couldn't see. So your mind filled in the blanks.
Just to go back to The Thing, that has some of the best one-liners in a film I've ever seen. The one-liners in that film are fantastic.
Yes.
So,
all right, so I'm going to ask my last question before we get into I just wanted to know what really scared you. It's always curious to ask.
Sure.
So, thank you for coming on and talking to us. Like, it's been fantastic as always.
I can't believe I didn't mention The Shining.
The Shining. Jaws is another one, Monty. You got to mention Jaws.
Yeah.
For the last 10 minutes of the whole film, but yet you were scared of this mysterious shark.
The Omen.
Oh yeah,
a whole generation from going to the beach.
All right, I'm sorry. I won't interrupt you again. You finish your question.
What? So you think The Shining is scarier than The Thing?
Oh, they're really hard to compare.
Yes.
I mean, The Shining's creepier. Let's put it that way. There's a
awesome.
couple of moments that in the thing that will make you jump out of your seat in a way that you don't really do that in The Shining. But there's just so much going on in The Shining. I could do a we'll get together sometime. We'll do a whole hour on just The Shining, because
That would be fun.
I could talk about horror films all day, so let me.
Anthony might be the biggest fan, but I think me and him have watched about the same amount of films. I just love movies because I love cinematic storytelling. So, yeah.
Is there something about the Magnus Archive project that we haven't touched on that you feel the need to speak about, and maybe our audience that are going to watch it here on the stream or on YouTube later on should know about this project?
So, where do I start? We haven't really talked about. So there, just to kind of plug something. We just recently, just like today, this afternoon, put out an article on our website and linked to it in the campaign. The article is called "A Guest from Mr. Cypher," and it talks about a lot of the ways in which that we're kind of making this game from the point of view of a Cypher System fan, like pretty interesting. And so I kind of can't stress enough that, like, if someone was to come to me, and I imagine that they can and would, and say, look, I've already got Cypher System, and I just backed and got my copy of Old Gods, and why would I need another game? There's a lot in this game that is really quite new. The mechanics that we've talked about, all the creatures, and a lot of the like the whole GM section is just all the kind of the thoughts that I've had over the years of running horror and how to really effectively run horror and create creepy atmosphere and all of that stuff. And so I hope I'm trying my best to create a product here that is going to really offer a lot of new stuff. And I just think the Magnus Archives as a story generation, a place where stories happen, a universe of story, it just is such a great foundation for that, right? That because there's I probably haven't even talked enough about like how when I sat down to listen to Magnus Archives, I was like, wow, this is just like if I was going to create a horror podcast, this is just exactly how I would do it. And so I just feel like it all really fits together really, really nicely. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I have no doubt in my mind, Monty, you guys are going to accomplish what you're setting out to do with this project. Because to be quite honest, you always do. So it's not, I definitely know that this is going to be accomplished, and you're definitely going to capture the tone and feel that not only the podcast provides, but what your guys are capable of as designers.
And we're absolutely thrilled with all the support that we've already gotten in just a short amount of time. So we're going to deliver.
Well, Monty, yeah, everything you just said, that whole portion you just talked about before I start asking questions from the audience, when you were saying how your approaches and all of how you were looking at telling the stories, you should call it the technique. That should be your title. Just call it the techniques or the technique. And that would really be kind of cool because I think you just have this because that's literally what it sounds like to me. You're just giving us more tools to tell these stories in variant ways, but you're still pushing telling stories versus playing
Sure.
the game.
Yeah.
Dean, before you start asking the questions, can I just preface by this? If we do not get to your question, first off, we apologize. there's quite a few questions here on the list, so we may not get to everything. And so if your question is vaguely similar to something that we already asked, we're probably going to skip it. And also, if you have additional questions, we have a live AMA going on right now as we speak on the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. So if we do not answer your question, once again, we apologize, but please go to the Discord server and post your question there. The link is in the chat and will be on the YouTube video tomorrow in the description, and someone from the MCG team will happily answer all your questions.
Absolutely.
All right.
I had to do the quick disclaimer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Hey. So, Monty, there's questions from Lost Damon. He said, would you say that the Magnus Archives leads more into speaker-oriented type focus? Not that any one type should ever be too heavily emphasized, but the Magic Archives feels very speaker-oriented.
Yeah, I totally can understand why you would say that, and I never even really thought about it that way. But based on the fact that it's based on a podcast, a speaker makes a lot of sense. I think that speaker, type character, what we're calling the elocutionist and the investigator are probably going to be sort of linchpins, but when it starts to hit the fan, you're really going to want to have a protector there who's got your back, just like in the podcast, right? With Bashira and the others, and then the occultist is just kind of the odd person out, but that's probably appropriate. Yeah, I think that this is a place where, maybe in a lot of games, a speaker type character doesn't always get to shine. They're definitely going to shine here.
Awesome. Love to hear it. I'll move along with another audience question here. This one is from Mani. I butcher names. I'm so sorry. Mani Anilu. Hopefully I got that right. TMA has a host of horrific monsters, generally one per statement. Will the monsters in the book be complex enough to create an entire investigation about? And if so, will there be inspiration with the creatures to help the GM create an investigation?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. Yes, I think that, I think that while there are certainly some really iconic monsters, creatures that show up multiple times, like I haven't even mentioned how much I love the Magnus Archives take on vampires, for example, and they show up multiple times, and so that's easier. But there are a few things, what's the line? The thing from the dark, the blanket accomplished nothing. It is the creature that comes while the person's sleeping, and it will be interesting, a fun game design challenge to make those kinds of creatures that, like Dean was saying, are just kind of, or maybe it was both of you, are not always shown right on the screen, so to speak, right? But are just kind of lurking in the shadows, and how to make an investigation about that and have that be interesting and compelling and challenging, but not, at no point does anybody shine a spotlight on the creature so that you get a clear understanding of what it is, right? Because so much of the importance of these things is mystery and the ambiguity. So a lot of that's going to come down to the advice in the GM chapter, which is going to be on how to handle that kind of thing. It's probably the part of the game that I am having the most fun with, is thinking about how to make these creatures work and whatnot, and so I'm going to do my best.
So just tell them don't sweat the technique.
Bright Crazy Star asks, what kind of rollable tables can we look forward to? I love the soul in Cypher's rollable tables. They feel very intentional.
Well, what kind of tables? It's I'm thinking. So I'm also a big fan of tables, but like I like tables where I can roll dice and see what the fates kind of give us, or I can choose something that fits the story. We just got done, and this is a whole other topic, but we just got done working on a project called The Weird. Weird's going off to the printer, and it's nothing but crazy tables that of the kind that I'm talking about. Magnus Archives will have some, like the one that comes to mind at first is I talked a little bit about once you start getting some supernatural influence in your character and you start getting some abilities, which if you want, you can also refuse. You don't have to have this happen, but if you kind of you open that door and you let the supernatural in, there's a number of different effects that can have, whether that just simply be that you're not in full control of the power, or you've got some specific debt now to the entity in question, or maybe there's some physical changes, right? Maybe it's maybe it's just kind of some scarring or whatnot. I mean, the archivist Jonathan Sims, by the end of the podcast, he's covered head to toe in so many wounds and scars, missing rib, and that kind of thing, will probably be true of player characters here too. And all of that will kind of be organized as a table, again, that you can either roll on or pick from or whatever.
That sounds awesome. Dean, you want to ask another question?
Yeah. So, wait a minute, I think that was the last one we had.
I'll ask the next one. I'll jump in here.
Go ahead, Al.
And this is a great one. I doubt it's going to be a yes, but Elzebub the Bard asks the question, can we have a TMA branded tape recorder as a stretch goal? And I love this one because we're all getting cassette tapes if you signed up for the thingy. And who has a cassette player anymore? Like, we need that stretch goal. Yeah, raise your hand. You want. We know you have a cassette player and a Betamax player and a fucking 8-track player. We know you have all those. But yes, go on.
Go in the basement and grab the tape player right now.
It's a fun question, probably outside the scope of our campaign, but you never know, right? Never say never.
Brockenwich asks, is there anything different between the limited edition book and the standard one, aside from the autographs and the cover?
You're putting me on the spot.
Question probably.
It might. I know that and again, I might be revealing more than I should here. Maybe this is a stretch goal, but I know that we have talked about taking some of the art, because we're getting some really awesome kick-ass art for this book, and doing some like full color plates, and that would go in the deluxe version. But that might be a stretch goal we haven't hit yet, and I'm sorry.
Absolutely love everybody on.
Lost David said, will players have a chance? What? Lost David said, will players have a chance to follow different entities besides the ones that one might expect from heroic characters?
I I'm trying to. So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, yeah, you could conceivably become an avatar of any of the entities, and I mean they're all bad, right? But some of them certainly are sort of more obviously overtly horrific than others, but I mean they're all bad. So they're it's not like it's I guess it's the it's the lesser of 14 evils, right? But I don't even know if that if you really can even look at it that way.
Oh
That
man.
sounds great. That just sounds awesome.
Yeah, again, y'all guys couldn't see me
I
on
mean,
camera, but like I was
we're
spazzing
gonna
out
just
when he mentioned the
wrap it
art.
up.
hold on. I want to apologize. We have a ton more questions, but we also do not want Monty here all day. He's busy. He actually has a Magnus Archive role-playing game that we want him to finish writing. So we will,
And he also needs sleep.
And real quick, before you ask the next
Oh,
question,
wait
I
up,
will
Charles
say, yeah,
clarified the last comment. The art plates Monty described are the most recently unlocked stretch goals. So it wasn't. Monty did not spill the beans. Right to the uprights field goal.
yeah.
So he did give some great information.
In my brain right now, there's all the information about the podcast, and there's all the information about the game, and then there's all the information about the campaign, and that's a lot of information to keep in your head. So I can't always remember exactly what we promised in the campaign or what we're just thinking about for later.
I told you, Monty, that's the word for you. You're visceral. You're like this bubbling font of happening. I dig it.
I can't
Well, you
believe
guys bring it out.
Is the entire team working on this project?
So all the sort of obvious, the people that you would expect, bears, kicking ass on the art and the layout and everything. The MCG support, from awesome people like Charles Ryan and Tammy Ryan, and fantastic editor, Perry. My mind is full of names. Latorco, and just this week, Bruce Cordell, game designer, kind of jumped in and started helping me with some of the work on the descriptors, and he'll probably be doing more. I've talked. This is still very much in the planning stages, but there's going to be adventures in this book, and I've proposed the idea that maybe Shauna creates one of the adventures. She's really great with horror. She did a kick-ass job on Old Gods, and I think she'd be a fun addition. Each one of the adventures in the book will come with its own statement, and Shauna is such a fantastic writer that I kind of just want her to make a statement.
Could you,
I have
you,
one of
you know,
that Shauna's Old Gods adventure for Gen Con was phenomenal. So
brilliant. It's great.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I loved running it.
I mean, not
And
only everyone I heard on the server that were players and the people that ran it, everybody's been just raving about that adventure.
She's great at wringing the emotion out of people.
and Monty, if I could make a suggestion, if you really want to give us something great, why don't you, Shauna, Bruce, and Sean all write a statement? Just throw it out there, because I mean, you guys all do great work.
Thank
It
you.
would just be so interesting to see what you guys could come up with, or
And the last thing I'm gonna, okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the last thing I'm gonna mention that we should have mentioned before because Chap mentioned it. The Weird, which should be coming out very soon, is a perfect compatible book for not only Old Gods but the Magnus Archives as well, because it's going to give you a lot of alternative.
And any game. And that was a project where everybody, like Bruce Cordell, Sean Germain, myself, Dominique Dickey, is that everybody? And Terry Latorco, all of us contributed to those very, very weird tables in there. So that's a great example. I was just gonna plug that. I'd love to have like Sean and Dominique working on Magnus Archives, but they're busy working on It's Only Magic, which is a book we have coming out that's going to be really cool of sort of modern day fantasy.
Yeah, you guys just got
Did Sean tell you that I got those right just from the pictures?
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys,
I also owe you an email. Yeah,
Anthony
we
L.
Monty's time, but
Right.
like every time Monty comes on, we want to keep him here, and as long as we possibly can, because he's just a wealth of knowledge, and he drops the most spoilers, y'all. I'm looking at you, Charles. I'm looking at you, Sean. Thank you so much, Monty. You've been fantastic as always. To see you are forever indebted to you for not only everything you do in the gaming space, for everything you do for us personally, just for our site and everything. We can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you guys. I personally love coming and chatting with you guys, and we really appreciate all the support you give to our games and our work, and it's fantastic.
You guys make it easy. Great product. It's easy to endorse, and the people behind it are just as genuine. So, thank you again. And yay for Monty, yay for MCG. Magnus Archives, go support it.
Al, you gotta say something before I kick my spiel?
Nah, kick your spiel. I got the end.
I was thinking, Al.
You muted, Al.
No, I'm not. What?
Before I kick my normal spiel, if you haven't, like we mentioned before, we have a live AMA going on right now. If we didn't ask your question, Al, you're muted. We can't hear anything you're saying.
Well, I'm not talking. You really can't hear me? What? How the hell?
We have a live AMA going on right now. Go to the Cypher Unlimited Discord server and ask Monty, Charles. There'll be several other people. Kate, I think, is answering questions as well. Several questions. So if you have anything you need to know, any concerns, anything about the Magnus Archives, just please go there and post your questions there. It will be answered. If you like us and you like what we do, join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server for all things Monte Cook Games. We well over 6,000 members and growing. Please go over there to play games, chat about games, post games, playing people's games, play with us, play with other people on the server, Cat Hub. Mention the Cat Hub. Go check out his video with Monte Cook Games. That was a fantastic video, a fantastic interview with the Rusty Quill guys. Definitely go check it out. Or follow us or sub here on Twitch if you find it in the kindness of your heart. Or go to our YouTube channel. We're trying to build our audience there. Like, share, and subscribe there. Our videos are always free, but it helps us out with a little support. Give us a little donation on Ko-fi. It helps us out with stuff like Zoom calls and stuff like that. Like I said earlier, our videos are always free. Or go to our online store, pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch like this shirt Dean has on or the hat I got on. And last but not least, we love you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been a blast.
So, with that being said, from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much.